Right, so for this video, I'm going to go through topic 2.1. So what I'm expecting you to have while I'm going through this is you should have your textbook open with you by the side, and what I'm going to do is by the end of this video, the last time that that's my boy. The next time that I see you guys, I'll be asking to see your textbook because I want to check to make sure that the annotations have been done. Okay, so starting off, the first question that I asked you guys, what is the meaning of sustainable development? So there are two terms involved in here, sustainable and development. And you see the way that I highlighted sustain for sustainable, meaning it's something that can last a very long time. As you can see what Angel wrote, sustainable means it can last very long, so long lasting, very good. And development means something that is in progress, right? Development, develop. There's some other good answers. By the way, a lot of good answers here. I'm just selecting a few to highlight. One thing that I like about what Ryan is saying, and I think Giselle also said something similar, development is about progressing in terms of economic, social, political, and sustainable is about maintaining something. Last one, term used by Vera, sustain. It means self-reliable. Means, okay, maybe the expression is not actually correct, but I understand what it means to be something that can continue on its own. Right? Sustainable, self-reliable, meaning you can rely on itself for it to continue going on and on and on. And develop means to grow. So if you imagine growing, developing something that can tahan for very, very long, people tend to think a sustainable development means a country just needs to get epically rich, and sustainable means you just make sure you save the environment. But what we're going to learn is sustainable has got many different ways to look at this. But maybe we focus on the word development first. Okay, development specifically, there are these three indicators. GDP per capita. Yeah, I use where's the one I highlighted? There you go. GDP per capita, which is here. Okay, there are total three domains when it comes to development. You say a country is rich versus a country that is poor. Remember at the very, very start of the year, I gave you a test, right? I asked you which country do you consider developed, which country do you consider not so developed. Then I'll be highlighted what Singapore is a rich country, UK, US, that kind of thing, right? So what are the things that actually distinguish a developed from a developing country? Specifically, one of the things that we look out for is GDP per capita. GDP meaning gross domestic product. Product meaning things that we produce. Think of it this way, things that we produce. Okay, so the amount of money the country can earn in a year. Okay, so how much you produce means how much you can earn, right? So how much you earn in a year. Per capita, it means divide by number of people. So the question becomes, why do you need to divide by number of people? Why not just say how much money you have? Right, divide by number of people to be fair. Because if we consider how much the country makes, by default China and India will be the most lah. Because they have the most number of people that's working, what? Right? But is it necessarily mean that they are more developed than Singapore? That's not true. Okay, because Singapore will provide more value added services and stuff like that. Okay, so as a country becomes more developed, GDP per capita increases because we can have more advanced factories, we work in service sector. Okay, so we have higher GDP. We compare that to developing country where the factories is the old school kind, people work in menial labor or farmers, so they are not earning as much. Okay, so one of the three domains is GDP per capita. I hope you've already highlighted, annotated everything that you see here should be annotated within your textbook as well. Then we move on to talk about life expectancy. Now, life expectancy is correctly defined here by Qingjun, the number of years a person can expect to live. So as a country becomes more developed, life expectancy will increase. Correct. Right? I mean, as you get richer, the country get richer, average person in the country will definitely live longer. Why? Because the medical department able to help them live longer. So other response that I saw was talking about medical technology, okay, the quality of life, the medication and stuff like that. All this contribute to a country living higher life expectancy. And third, last one is talking about adult literacy rate. So literacy rate means the percentage of population 15 and over who can read and write. Simple, right? So obviously you guys are literate lah, otherwise you won't be able to write this down. Okay, so as a country becomes more developed, again it will increase because there's more educational opportunities for them to be able to study. Right, schools are more located everywhere in the country as opposed to less developed countries where maybe the the rural areas, the kampong areas, there are less schools. Okay? Oh, sorry. So, let's see. As we move on, let's see what other good responses there are, or is it that I just highlighted Cheng Jun's one? Or maybe just the one. Okay, so these are the 3 indicators for development. Then, when we consider if a country wants to get richer, country wants to have longer life expectancy, country wants to have smarter people who can read and write, how do we go about doing so? Sustainably. Okay, the first clearest one, maybe the main clearest one is always environmental lah. But the idea behind this is also if you want to be able to sustain, like how Vera put it, you want to be able to self-reliant. Right? You want to rely on yourself to be able to succeed in the long run and tahan on your own. You don't need to rely on other people. So how do you go about economically? Let's take a look. Okay, for example, here. Okay, so I got you guys to write down your responses. So I'm using Curly's as a sample. Okay, we're starting off with the points that I have written first. Here, supporting local businesses. So if you want the country to develop sustainably, for one, we must support local businesses. Important, huh? Please make sure you're highlighting this. But why local businesses specifically? Okay, because we want to make sure there's sufficient demand for goods and services so that they can sustain themselves. We want to support them by making sure when you want to, say for example, you want to allow shops to open, it has to be near populated areas, right? Because otherwise, how are they possibly going to survive if you only allow shops to open in the middle of a forest? There's no way that they can survive, right? Okay, and also why is it important for us to support them, make sure that they survive? Is so that they can also provide employment for all the local residents, so the local residents can also have an income and increase their standard of living. It's very good, Kalis. Okay, keep in mind, if say everything we own is reliant on China and USA and Malaysia, imagine that chicken scenario. Remember, we wanted to buy chicken, the only way we can get it is through Malaysia. So what happens? We are not reliant on ourselves, right? We don't have our own food, our own supply of chicken. We ended up suffering if a country decides to stop. Same thing. That's why we support local businesses. Okay. Second one, what else can we do? So this is strategy number 1. By the way, I would like you to also number the approaches in your textbook as well. Okay. For economic sustainability, number 1 is to support local businesses. Number 2 is keeping transport and infrastructure costs low. How do we do that? Okay, how? By building the buildings and objects close to one another. So you don't need to travel, you don't need to use transport. Example, we have schools everywhere within the neighborhood, right? Within every neighborhood, there will at least be one school. Why? So that, it's not unaffordable. Can you imagine if all the schools are only at Orchard Road? That means every single one of you will have to spend a lot on transport just to get to school every single day. Makes no sense, right? You're going to make it not sustainable. Rich people maybe can afford, poor people cannot afford. Then how? Our country cannot be everybody literate anymore. Yeah? Then, moving on, transport infrastructure can also be close to one another so that we can save the cost of transport infrastructure. Why? Example, you see your bus interchange and your MRT station. They are close to each other. Why is it important for it to be close to each other? Because if they're far apart, can you imagine having to build the shelter lah, the tunnel lah, the what lah, here and there. All these are going to incur a lot more cost. So if you want to make life easy for your residents, so you want to save the money as well, you just put them next to each other. So that's how you save the cost. Okay, let's hark back to the main concept here in this case, which is making sure the country can rely on itself. We don't need to rely on others by having successful local businesses and making sure the cost of living is low. Cost of living is affordable. I'm writing these terms down, so I'm expecting you to do as well. Cost of living is affordable. Okay? So, this is what Curly's wrote, which I thought was brilliant. Any others that I selected earlier? Okay, let's take a look at what Manfred wrote as well. Okay, building transport infrastructure close to each other. I will not be stretched out. Okay, I know this is an expression. This is his own words. But the idea is if it's not too spread apart, means it will be expensive. Because tunnels, bridges, shelter, all these things all cost money. So you want to save on money, so make sure that it's not spread out lah. Okay. So that's one on economic sustainability. I think that should be fairly straightforward. Economic is all about the money. Okay, the next point is talking about social sustainability. Social meaning, can I please have you annotate this as well? Social is talking about way of life. Okay, the relationships. Okay, so a country cannot be sustainable if it cannot support itself. It keeps relying on other people. Country cannot be sustainable if it's so expensive people cannot afford to live there. Now we move on to social sustainability. A country cannot be sustainable if very wealthy, right? Everybody very literate, right? But the moment there's a chance, everybody will run away from the country. Right? Imagine all those countries where the people are just, once you're educated, you just run straight away, go somewhere else to find work. That's quite sad. Right? In order for you to achieve social sustainability, there has to be things that a country can do as well. For example, let's take a look at what Max's slide. We start with my point first. First one, the idea of community spaces and small urban neighborhood, so that there's more social interactions. Right? When it comes to the playground that you have, the fact that it's shared only by, example, playground, shared by what? 5-10 buildings at most, right? 10 blocks, sorry, not buildings, blocks within your precinct. Why cater so many playgrounds for that? It's because then you can build the relationships among the same few people that you always see at the same playground. Right? You get to know, oh, this fella has always been there. You see them, you grow up together with them, you build a relationship there as well. Okay, at the same time, by making people feel included. That's why we have exercise park. We have the elderly exercise, right? So that they don't feel excluded. They feel that there's a sense of shared identity. We already learned this when it comes to Sec 2 geography. Yeah. So the idea of a shared identity, imagine, how does this contribute to social sustainability? Right? The main word I can think of right now is love. Simple. It makes the locals love their country. So they make themselves not want to travel out, not want to leave the country. Okay? So this is the point about social sustainability. The first box, just the blue box only. Then we talk about the orange box. So we want them to interact. Is there a purpose behind this? So when they interact and they discuss issues, there's a culture of open communication. Right? The fact that people can keep talking to one another, they don't need to complain to town council over every single thing. That's a benefit because that means there's positive relationships and they can solve problems without going to the government. Can you imagine if just within you and your neighbor borrow a cup of sugar, then you want sugar back and your neighbor don't want, say, oh, I'm so sorry, I need to rush out of my house right now. Then you go, you borrow my sugar before, I call police on you. That's quite sad, right? How is that talking about a relationship in a country? So they want you to build positive relationships in a sense where you can solve problems together. You don't need to turn to the government for help. You say, for example, somebody just to help one another out. Somebody trip and fall. You don't need to just call ambulance. Can you please help this old lady to pick up, to stand up? You can just help one another out. Okay, so that's an example of social sustainability. Okay, so as we move on, that's that for social sustainability. Remember, sustainability means you can last for a long time. This is what just now was Ryan's point, is it? Can't remember. Okay, so it's about being able to last a long time. Oh, I think it's Kelly's point. Forgot already. Okay, while Vera's point is talking about being able to rely on yourself. To be able to last a long time, a country needs to have its people inside the country. So this is how it works. Okay, and the last and the most obvious one is talking about environmental sustainability, which I ask you, what are some of the environmental sustainability stuff that you remember from Tree Lodge at Punggol? Right? Having rooftop garden that remove pollutants, greenery so that it's not so hot, These are all strategies for them to make sure that it's environmentally sustainable. Also, the idea of solar panels so that they don't need to use fossil fuels for electricity. So all these kind of strategies, they will help to make the place more environmentally sustainable. Right? So let's go into the nitty-gritty of it. In what way does this make it sustainable? Total 3 different approaches. First one. Okay, where's the one that I highlighted? There you go. Let's use, whose one is this? Ryan's one. Okay, first point is ample protection for nature. I hope it's numbered inside the textbook. If it's not, please number them. So these are the 4 different arguments as for how to go about getting ample protection. For one, we want wildlife thriving within our urban spaces. What does that mean? That means within our housing there are parks, right? There are trees, there's green spaces in the urban area. Okay, so it's not just urban and we sacrifice all the greenery. Why? Okay, for human-wildlife coexistence. I love how Ryan is bringing this up. A chance to interact so they gain appreciation. So they want to take care of the environment themselves. I thought this is brilliant. Okay. Next one, having a variety of habitats. A variety of habitats simply means also more habitats. So more creatures can call themselves home. Okay. The idea is, it's not just parks of all one tree. There are different types of tree. Why? So that there is adequate shelter for variety of wildlife to thrive. Right? You cannot just have all one tree, then that means only one type of bird can find it comfortable. You want to encourage a lot of wildlife, you have to have a lot of different types of vegetation as well. So this is what's meant by ample protection of nature, which is why NParks also have their conservation and the recovery program. Okay, so this is one aspect of environmental sustainability. You put greenery amongst the urban areas. Okay, then as we move on to talk about the second one, second aspect of environmental sustainability is this, recycling. Okay, not just recycling is just one aspect of it, but the important one is talking about waste minimization. How to reduce waste. You know why we recycle? It's so that the stuff that we have used, right, can be reused again, right? They will make it into something else, right? So that means our waste is no longer just going into the landfill. It's making something else now. So how do we go about doing so? By conveniently locating the facilities, so it's convenient, right? So people will want to, there is less barrier, people won't feel not as challenging to recycle. Okay. Second one, having a high enough population density to allow waste collection to be economically viable. I know this term seems very technical. What the frick does this actually mean? Okay, this means if you want to recycle, if say the entire country in Singapore we only have one of this blue bin, that means the company, the recycling company, will only get to recycle a little bit. They're gonna lose their money, so they're gonna go bankrupt. So you need to have more of this, and it must have a lot of people to recycle. So there is more rubbish that they can then process. By doing so, then they can earn more money. So then they can have more profit. So then they can sustain their business. And if they can sustain their business, we can continue to recycle. Yeah? So that's this idea of waste management. So in order for us to do this, what? NParks doesn't do much about this. This one more town council. They give a lot of posters and banners to educate. So we are teaching the residents what is it about recycling, what to recycle, when to recycle and stuff like that. Okay? And the final third aspect of it, is there any more? There you go. Okay, so you can see here, this one is from Manfred. The idea of recycling bins being convenient is so that it's not far away, because if it's too far away, people will be demotivated. I didn't put in Indian this part blank, but you know, if it's so far away, so challenging, people won't be bothered. Okay, so last point, the third aspect of environmental sustainability is energy and water efficient design. Okay, what do I mean by that? You already know this. Just now you already brought up the idea when we talk about Tree Lodge at Punggol. The fact that there is water efficient infrastructure, energy efficient infrastructure, solar panels, sensor, the movement sensor, right? The Trilodge at Punggol also have, right? Movement sensor at to turn on the lights, the water efficient design for the flush system. These are all things that they can be done to achieve sustainability. Because how can you be environmentally sustainable if you keep taking up resources from the planet, right? You need to try and minimize what you take from the planet. In this case, you're trying to minimize, for example, the HDB Green Towns program where they use cool paint to lower temperature. Legit, no? It can actually work. So why is it important for us to lower the temperature? Because if you lower the temperature, you reduce energy consumption, right? No aircon, no need for aircon. And if you don't need aircon, easier for you to sustain, because you don't need to spend so much money on energy. Same time, you don't need to no fossil fuel, or not no lah, less fossil fuel burnt. Okay, so this is the end for the video. I wanted to go through some of your comic strips, but I see not everybody has submitted yet ready. I'm going to start checking people soon. But either ways, hopefully this has been has been enlightening for 2.1. We are missing a lot of lessons. So my expectation is for today, as you watch this video, finish through everything and notate in your textbooks. No reason why your textbook should be clean. Otherwise, you'll be staying back with me for you to do this separately. Then there is a worksheet 2.1 for you to do on Google Classroom as well. Alright, that's all I have for you guys for this video. Hopefully you have a good long weekend, or rather a good break lah. Yeah.